Okay, I think we're going to have one more session and finish this puzzle. I told you everything that I read this week, um, so I can't really tell you anything more about that. But let's see what else I can tell you about. I'm not even sure what to talk about anymore. Well, let's talk about my YouTube experience and my coloring experience. How about I do that? Um, I started coloring maybe 7 years ago. Um, I was in the hospital and I was bored, and I walked by one of the rooms and I saw a puzzle tape, not a puzzle table. I saw some, I said puzzle. How I started adult coloring. I want to talk about that. I think I just stumbled over my own words. Well, I saw some pages and I saw some colored pencils, so I grabbed them up and I started coloring them purely without skill or blending or anything along that line, just something to keep myself busy. And I realized that I enjoyed it, and I came home a day or so later. This was just a fluke that I was there, and I went to Amazon and I purchased several coloring books, mostly Dover. Started off with Coloring Pages from Dover Publishing, and I grabbed a few color, and then I think I got Derwent Color Soft and Prang. I don't know why I started off with Prang, but those were the pencils that I got. And I colored. I didn't know anything about shading, blending, or anything like that, but I found out that it was a fabulous stress reliever. So it grew from there. I then, I don't know how I knew or found, I don't remember what led me to this, but I discovered that there were YouTube channels that had tutorials for coloring. So I joined a few YouTube channels, and I think I mentioned this in my live stream last night. I joined 2 YouTube channels, 3, I think, Julie Passion for Coloring, Devlina Art, and I know there was a third one, but at least those 2. And I especially liked Devlina Art because she had Joanna Basford pages where she was coloring flowers. So right away I went to Amazon and I bought several Johanna Basford books, her early books. I can't tell you what they are right now. I'm not going to get up and check, but I bought several Johanna Basford books and I started doing the tutorials. I wasn't really involved with any Facebook groups, so it's not like I was posting them, but now I found that somebody who was born with zero artistic skill could use tutorials to learn things like blending and so forth and so on. So slowly but surely I started discovering Facebook groups, and I was on Facebook for maybe a year, and in that time I started I ran into a group, Coloring Book Color Along. And in that group, people, they would have like color alongs every single month. You would suggest a page, and 2 or 3 people would do that page with you, and you could select up to 1 page, 2 pages, or 5 pages. So I started doing those color alongs, and then I also found another artist, and her name was Pam Smart, and it was Color Me Your Way, and I bought some of her books. And so between the Pam Smart books, those Facebook groups, and the tutorials that I was finding on YouTube, I began to give my all in adult coloring. And I started, I must admit that I started collecting. I'm not ashamed of it, but I started collecting. I would discover a certain artist had X amount of books, so I would buy all of those books. and then the next artist had certain certain amount of books, so I would buy those books. And I started building up a fairly modest collection, but I started collecting, and I also started buying other mediums. Like I said, I started off with Color Soft and Praying. I never bought Crayola, but it's Color Soft and Praying. And then I learned about the Prismacolor Premieres, so I bought those, and it just mushroomed from there. And during those early years, I colored for like 10 hours a day, literally. I would get up in the morning, do my ablution, so to speak, and I colored in bed. Sometimes I would color on the couch, but I would color in bed, and I would color all day. And I just kept buying more and more and more stuff, and years started to go by, and as those years went by, I colored over 900 pictures. Along the way, I learned about Anne, A Colorful Life. She was the first YouTuber I found, and I joined her channel, and can I just use an overused expression? They say the rest is history. And so I kept on, and I kept on, and I kept on, and I kept growing, and I kept loving it, and I learned about different artists, and I learned about different supplies, and I fell in love with the hobby. I never got, the skill that some people are born with, like, Colin Chat with Sammy, my gosh, her skill is amazing. Or Dee Dee Willingham. I mean, come on, I'll never be at that level, and I'm not worried about it. I mean, I have no qualms about, saying that, I won't ever have those skills. I'm not looking for any pat on the back about that. But what I did learn is to really love and appreciate more about art than I ever did in my life through the eyes of their coloring. And I never really got too interested in the other hobbies that went along with adult coloring, but I did enjoy watching those two ladies and seeing them bring things alive through the pages of their coloring. So, and then I just kept on going, I really loved the coloring community despite the headaches that came with it. The truth be told, there was a lot of dark days, but there was a lot of fun days. And I choose to think more about the positive experiences that I enjoyed from being a part of that community. Being a part of that community did two things for me. One is I started to develop some really good friendships that I have to this day as a result of me being in those coloring communities. But something else happened, and I'm going to backtrack. Maybe 8 years ago, I reviewed on Yahoo, back when Yahoo Groups was bigger, like Yahoo Groups was considered what Facebook is now. On these Yahoo Groups, I by means of these Yahoo Groups, I became a book reviewer, and I reviewed for maybe 4 or 5 years. And I loved it. I was really good at it, and I got to the point when I started reviewing for Romantic Times magazine. I even had my own byline, and I just loved it. I just loved it. But I kind of had I had a break, a mental break, so I stopped reviewing. Not only did I stop reviewing, but I stopped reading. I stopped. I mean, I went cold turkey for 6 years maybe. It's something that I did from my childhood on. I gave up because of my broken, mentality at the time. So back to the coloring community. I was on a live stream, and somebody used the term NetGalley, and I said, "What is NetGal?" That's what I typed, NetGal. Because I didn't type the full word in, nothing happened. But the word locked in my brain, even though at this point I didn't know how to use the term NetGalley correctly. It took 2 or 3 weeks of live streams for the term NetGalley to be used again in the audience and the stream and with the streamer. So this time I heard the full term NetGalley. So I said, "What is NetGalley?" And they told me what NetGalley was. I logged on to netgalley.com, and that is how I started reviewing again. It took, like I said, it took me a couple of weeks to remember fully what was said with regard to reviewing and to be able to connect myself with NetGalley. And so I grabbed a hold of this website in March of 2018. In May of 2018, I started a blog, and as of today, I think I have written maybe 1,123 reviews in 2 years. 1,122 reviews in 2 years. And that is how I started reviewing, and I just don't know if I'll ever stop. You know, I loved it. I'm thankful that I happened upon an open discussion in a coloring live stream where people were talking about book reviewing, and it got my foot in the door. It got me going, and I gone gung-ho, like I said, over 1,100 reviews in a couple of years. I don't have as many subscribers as I would like on my blog, and I started off with maybe somewhere in the realm of 500 views a week, and then it slowly creeped up to a little bit more, and then it just kept slowly creeping up. But I wasn't doing it for views. I wasn't doing it for numbers. I was doing it because I missed it after I stopped cold turkey 7 or 8 years ago. I'm not taking a break. I'm just kind of plotting my next pieces. It's a door that I'm looking at. I started plotting my future. I just said plotting for the puzzle. So I started. I lost my thought because I just got a message and it distracted me. I started. What was my thought? I don't know. I started reading, I started blogging, and I'm busier than ever. I can take a break if I need to take a break, like days that the fibro gets a hold of me and I need to sleep for 10 hours. You know, I can do that. Or I can take 3 days and read 6 books in 3 days. Whatever I want to do, you know, I'm loving doing it because it's a hobby for me, and it's a hobby that I enjoy. And I work really hard at it. You know, I've been asked more than once, you know, why don't you do this, you know, make a living at this, and I don't want it, you know. I do have something I want to consider, though. I will correct myself. Is I'm considered to be an analytical reviewer by the way. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. I'm considered to be an analytical reviewer, and because people call me analytical, it's been suggested that I check out becoming an editor, and that I would like to do, and that would allow me to have the hobby of book reviewing untainted by worrying about payment and trying to fit into a square, you know how you can't put a square such and such into a round hole. I can't quite think of how to say it. So I am thinking about checking into editing, but I don't want to ever get paid for book reviewing. I love it, and oops, it looks like it goes there, but it doesn't quite go there. Let's see. I'll take that up. So anyway, so that's how that's a little bit of history with me on how I became a book reviewer. And I have to, I don't know if I've ever told Shalene the story, but the whole time that I was trying to figure out what NetGalley was when I first called it NetGalley, it was because I was on, I think it was Shalene's stream, and she was talking to somebody else who was on NetGalley at the time. I don't even remember who. And once I was able to lock in what they were talking about, I found the website. From there, I joined Edelweiss, or actually, it's Edelweiss. I joined that website and I started reviewing for them too. And then as time went on, I thought that went there. As time went on, I slowly but surely started getting connected with different authors and then different publishers. And then I started joining street teams. I think I'm on 5 or 6 street teams right now. I just messed those pieces up. I'll just leave them for a minute. I started joining street teams, and that gave me, I guess if I want to use the word exposure, but that gave me a lot of exposure, is being a part of several street teams. And that's exciting because you get very early reads of certain books. And the only problem that I have with early reads of books is that my wait for the next book seems to be far longer than the next reader who gets the book closer to the time it gets released. So let's say this February book that I read a month ago won't be out until February. So the likelihood of the next book in that series, it probably won't be out until at least September of next year. That puts me like a whole year of having to wait for a very good book to come out. So that's the only negative thing about being on street teams is my very early reads kind of gives me a longer wait time than maybe the next person. But it's not a negative thing. And I want to say something else that has tickled me, but I've never been able to express this thought, is when I'm having a very good month, I'll read 70 books, 65 or 70 books on a great month. And people will say, aren't you afraid? I'm just going to dump the last pieces onto the table. People will say to me, aren't you afraid of running out of good things to read? Nope. Never, never. I don't know where people get this incredible talent of penning stories for us readers. They take this talent and they put books in our hands so that we get to find joy in their work. And there seems to be no end of this talent. Yeah, we live in a dark world, a wicked world. The Bible says this world is lying in the power of the wicked one. But nonetheless, you got talented people out there. And not only that, is I kind of have a wee bit of an advantage. And that advantage is I spent 6 or 7 years without reading. So what that has done for me is let me make sure I'm on, What that has done for me is it allows me to glom, or, to binge read huge series, book after book after book, without waiting for the next books in the series to be released. So that's kind of like a bonus that I have, for somebody who stepped away from reading for such a long time. So like, for example, the Catherine Coulter FBI series, or the J.D. Robb series, or the Iris Johansson series, the Faye Kellerman series, the James Patterson, James Patterson, Alex Cross series I read during my drought, okay? I was never more than 2 or 3 books behind. So I will correct myself so that I'm not lying. Because I hate when I say something and then later I realize that it's not 100% accurate. So James Patterson, nope, buddy, you never got pushed to the side. Nope, I kept him going. But I don't have to wait for, every 6 to 7 months for a new book to be released, because I jumped into so many series very late in the game, and by jumping into these series late in the game, I get to be able to read these books in, like a binge read, just like somebody might binge watch a television show. I get to binge read series. So that I just wanted to bring that up because I get asked that question, aren't you afraid of running out of things to read? And I can say, nope, never gonna happen. And oh great, where did that piece go? Something else fun about the way that I like to read is I do reading challenges every month, and in these reading challenges I run into new authors that I have never read before. And I'll give you a perfect example is Kristen Hanna. Never heard of her before. For that matter, I never heard of Karen Slaughter. Okay, so now that I'm joining these challenges, I'm running across names of authors that I had not yet heard of. So it opens up the door for me to read all of these new series. And I love to binge read them. Like when I read the Karen Slaughter series, which was 2 series, I think I read all 13 or 14 books in 6 days, and we're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages in just 6 days. Somewhere in the realm of 3,000 or 4,000 pages in less than a few days. And I'm not being left hung out to dry, because she's already had a new book in was it her? No, Iris Johansson has had a new book. So there's always going to be something for me to read. So I just wanted to mention that. Another interesting thing that I'll mention, because I'm determined to finish this puzzle on this go. I don't know why it's taken me so long, but I'm going to get it. Okay, let's see. Yeah, let's get this puzzle going. Let's solve this puzzle. So, something that I exposed myself to, which is negativity. And the negativity that I exposed myself to, I know I could control. But I belong to a lot of communities and a lot of different groups that are connected with the communities that I'm involved in. And in the reading community on Facebook, aside from the challenges that I love doing every month, you have people in each group who do what's called a monthly or even a weekly wrap-up. And when I do my wrap-up, it's Hatesville. It's like I enter into a twilight zone of negativity, disparagement, being called a liar, and much more, because it's impossible to read as many books as I read, in whether it's a week, a month, a day, or a year. And that's where the control is in my hand to not post, my progress. But there's a measure of stubbornness that I have that's probably not quite a good trait, especially as a Christian. Stubbornness is not a great trait. But the measure of stubbornness that I have says that if John, Dick, and Mary can report what they read, to spark conversation with other readers who enjoy reading the same books, then why can't Robin? That's me. And that's what it's doing for me is it's making me kind of have to prove myself to naysayers, and it comes up more often than not. People who want you have some people who are genuinely curious about how I'm able to read as many books as I read. You have people who are drawn to your post because they hear a summary that I give and it raises their interest, and they in turn fall in love with an author that they hadn't run across up until that point. And then you have people who just want to give you a pat on the back and say job well done, And then you have the people that pretty much call you a liar to your face. And that's hurtful and stressful. But again, I can't fully complain about it because it's in my control, because it's a decision that I make to post, when I could simply just post in the book challenge groups that I'm in and on my blog when I do my wrap-ups and call it a day. That's what I could do. But that stubbornness that I mentioned, that's not always such a desirable trait, says to me, well, if they can post, then I can post too. And so what I started doing in my weekly wrap-ups is I will post stats on what I read that week, and I will talk about what my favorite books were that week, and I will remind anybody that's curious about whether or not I read what I'm claiming to read, and I gotta use the word claiming in quotes, if I am reading when I am posting, I will often say, kind of give a disclaimer: I'm homebound, I'm disabled, I don't have a lot of household responsibilities, etc., 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 and that gives me time to read, and I don't watch a lot of TV, disclaimers. And sometimes the disclaimers work, people are gracious, and I get to share, expound on my love for what I read that previous week, and that's great. But then that's not always the case, unfortunately. It's not always the case. Okay, so something isn't right, so we're going to take this piece up. I need to see this a little bit closer. Can you see it? Yes. I'm trying to see what I'm doing wrong right here. Let me take this piece up too. Okay, I think I did something wrong there, so let's, yeah, I just had to move. Sometimes I will get close to putting like a section in the puzzle, and then that will help me to see that, because sometimes the pieces actually fit. That doesn't mean they go, but they will fit. So that, I just fixed that little section right there. So I run into these naysayers, and I've been in situations where people have been removed from Facebook groups. They've actually had to be removed because they want to start a fight. And one thing that I do, I admit to getting emotional, is I don't argue with anybody on any group regarding whether or not I read what I say I read. I don't argue. I will answer, but when I get called out as a liar, then my stance might be a wee bit different, because nobody wants to be referred to as being a liar. I mean, nobody does, and there's something very interesting about being called a liar when it comes to reading a certain amount of books. What would I have, or anybody for that matter, have to gain by lying about what they did or did not read in any given month? There's no prize for how many books I read. There's no reward. So, when someone lies, I don't know. I've never been a liar, so this is my guess. If somebody wants to lie, then there's got to be something that's going to be a reward for that lie. And all I want to understand, when people want to give me serious grief for the amount of books that I read, is, what would I have to gain by, what do I have to gain by lying? I don't understand that. Please tell me what any reader in any Facebook group or YouTube channel or whatever has to gain by lying. Maybe there are liars and cheats out there, but guess what? I'm not one of them. I'm not a liar or a cheat for any number of reasons, but let's put the cards right on the table. I'm a Christian, and lying is against my faith, so let's just use that and go with that. I'm not going to lie about what I read. So, that's, like I said, I'm not really complaining about it. I'm just simply making conversation, because I'm almost done with my puzzle. And so you're just kind of captive while I get these last few pieces in. And then it's always a little iffy when I get to the end to see whether or not I knocked a piece off the table or whether one of my cats cost me a piece, but it's looking like I am not missing any pieces to this puzzle. Last piece. Oh my word, it's done and there are no missing pieces. Let's get this baby. I'm going to shut this other lamp off and get this baby on a full screen shot. So I'm going to take the mic off for 1 minute and turn the overhead light on because I want you to see the finished job. Give me 1 moment. Alright, that should give you enough light to... Okay, that should give you enough light without too much of a glare. And let's see how much, if we can get this whole thing in frame. And there we go, Charles Wysocki, Old Cape Cod. Now I get to do my castle puzzle. One more time. There we go, all done. I got it. I am so happy. I am so happy that I finished this puzzle because I almost put it back in the box. I'm also happy that I'm not missing any pieces because Toby, my cat, this guy right here, let me show you Toby. See this guy right here? He decided to play hockey with some puzzle pieces on Tuesday and had me going under the table looking for pieces that he thought he would bat around. And we still don't have any missing pieces. So that's it. Puzzle's done. Video will be over. Thank you for listening. And you have a great one. I just leave it. Let's leave this on here. Okay. I'm trying to leave it on a good note. There we go. All right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.